The human body is a fortress, capable of enduring pain, surviving famine, and healing from grievous wounds. But what happens when the very architects of society decide that the body is not just a fortress, but a cage? Imagine lying in a silent, spotless room. The walls are blinding white, the air is still, and there is no shadow, no sound, no color to break the endless, suffocating monotony. They haven't touched you, they haven't left a bruise. But after weeks, your own mind becomes your torturer, a screaming echo chamber of fear and forgotten memories. Now, imagine a time when the goal was not to break the mind, but to dissolve the flesh. Picture a Persian soldier, locked between two narrow boats, smeared with honey, left to the slow, relentless mercy of the sun and the insects, dying not in minutes, but over 17 horrifying, screaming days. From the chilling genius of psychological isolation to the crude, barbaric elegance of slow dismemberment. This is the hidden history of human cruelty. This is the story of how, across thousands of years, we have mastered one terrible art, the art of making death an unbearable wish. We are about to journey through 20 of the most horrific torture methods in history. Be warned, what you are about to see will change how you think about pain forever. Watch all the way to the end. There's so much valuable info waiting for you. Don't forget to subscribe, tap like, and share this video. Every bit of support helps our channel grow and inspires us to make even better videos for you. We must begin our terrible journey in the ancient world, in the lands ruled by the great Persian Empire, where betrayal was paid for not with a quick sword, but with weeks of living terror. Our first method is so gruesome that even historians struggle to write about it without a shiver. It was called scaphism. The name itself sounds harmless, almost like a gentle boat ride, but the reality was pure, focused evil. To understand scaphism, we must look at the man who suffered it. His name was Mithridates. He was a soldier, possibly a nobleman, who had done something terrible. He had disgraced the king, or perhaps worse, he had confessed to a secret that was supposed to remain silent. When a person's punishment was meant to serve as the ultimate public warning, a lesson etched into the memory of every witness, scaphism was the favored tool. The method began with two simple boats, or sometimes two hollowed-out tree trunks. These were narrow and shallow. The victim, Mithridates, was laid down in one, and the second boat was placed directly on top of him. They were fastened together tightly, leaving only the man's head, hands, and feet sticking out from the wooden coffin. He was trapped, unable to move a muscle, perfectly confined. This was the start of his living nightmare. He could see the sky, but he was utterly helpless. He was entombed in wood, yet exposed to the elements. But confinement was only the framework for the real horror. The executioners then forced Mithridates to consume vast amounts of milk and honey. They didn't just offer him a drink. They forced it down his throat until his stomach was painfully full. This sweet, rich mixture was the crucial ingredient for the next, horrifying stage. The purpose of the milk and honey was not to nourish him, but to cause immediate and severe diarrhea. This meant the inside of the boat rapidly became filled with human waste, creating a foul, sticky pool around his body. The executioners made sure to smear the rest of the sweet mixture, the milk and honey, onto Mithridates' exposed face, hands, and feet. The goal was to attract certain creatures. In the heat of the Persian sun, the smell of the waste and the sticky sweetness of the honey created an irresistible feast for swarms of insects, flies, and other vermin. These creatures, attracted by the decaying filth and the sweet treat, began to feed. They didn't just bite him. They burrowed into the soft, exposed flesh. The pain was secondary to the sheer psychological breakdown. Every bite, every sting, was a reminder that he was slowly being eaten alive by tiny, relentless predators. For 17 horrifying days, Mithridates endured this. He was continually force-fed to ensure the cycle of waste and feeding continued without pause. The historian Plutarch recorded this event, ensuring the world never forgot the sheer, chilling artistry of this particular cruelty. Scaphism was not designed to kill quickly, but to turn the victim's life into a prolonged, agonizing decomposition. Death eventually came from a combination of blood poisoning, dehydration, and the shock of being consumed by insects. It was a death so slow, so deliberate, and so utterly humiliating that it stands as one of the darkest examples of human ingenuity dedicated to pain. It wasn't just torture. It was a horrifying, 17-day theatrical spectacle of suffering. The story of Scaphism shows us the extremes of physical pain, the body broken down by external forces. But as history moved forward, especially into the modern era, the methods of cruelty did not disappear. They simply evolved. They became quieter, cleaner, and arguably far more insidious. We move now from the sun-baked boats of Persia to the cold, sterile rooms of contemporary political prisons. We move to the chilling reality of white torture. White torture is a profound step away from historical methods. There is no blood, no visible bruises, no broken bones to prove that suffering occurred. This is a method designed not to kill the body, but to systematically, piece by piece, dismantle and destroy the victim's mind and personality. It is psychological torture refined to an art form, leaving the subject physically intact, but mentally devastated. The core principle of white torture is sensory deprivation and isolation. The world we live in is defined by sights, sounds, smells, and textures. Our minds rely on this constant stream of information to understand who we are and where we are. White torture intentionally removes all of it, creating a mental vacuum. Imagine being placed in a cell where everything is white. The walls, the floor, the ceiling, the light fixture, the clothes you wear, the food you eat, often plain white rice or yogurt. All are the same, blinding white color. This extreme visual monotony erases shadows, depth, and contrast, causing the eyes to strain and the mind to lose its ability to judge space and time. The environment is designed to be sterile and silent. The floors are covered so that the prisoner's footsteps make no noise. Soundproofing is so perfect that you cannot hear traffic, other prisoners, or even your own breath very clearly. Often, there is a constant, low, monotonous humming sound that is just loud enough to prevent true silence, but not distinct enough to focus on. The goal of this sound is to prevent the victim from being able to hear their own thoughts, creating an agonizing form of white noise that slowly drives them mad. The victim is also deprived of any meaningful human contact. They might be given mittens or gloves so they cannot feel the difference between the textures of their own skin and their clothes. They are completely cut off from the outside world. No books, no newspapers, no television, and absolutely no conversation. Days turn into weeks, and the weeks blend into an unending, featureless expanse. Survivors have testified that after a short time, they started to forget their own names, the faces of their family members, and even what day of the week it was. The mind, starved of input, begins to create its own reality, leading to intense hallucinations, psychosis, and a complete loss of self. This subtle, modern method proves that the worst torture does not require fire or iron. It just requires absolute emptiness. By taking away everything that defines a human being's reality, their senses, their memory, and their identity, the captors achieve a complete mental breakdown, often leaving the victim a shell of their former self, ready to accept any demand just to feel something real again. This silent, spotless room is perhaps the most terrifying symbol of 21st century cruelty. If scaphism was ancient persistence and white torture is modern sterility, then the medieval period offered something different: brutal, mechanical ingenuity. The darkest minds of the Middle Ages dreamed up devices that turned simple metals and woods into instruments of spectacular, agonizing pain. Our third horror is a perfect example of this mechanical cruelty: the Iron Maiden. The Iron Maiden is perhaps one of the most famous and most misunderstood torture devices in history. It appears in countless movies and stories as a terrifying vertical sarcophagus, shaped like a woman, lined with sharp spikes. The victim is locked inside, and as the doors close, the spikes pierce them slowly, ensuring a long, excruciating death without touching vital organs. However, the reality of the Iron Maiden is complex. Historians strongly debate whether the Iron Maiden, as we imagine it, a spike-lined coffin, was actually used extensively during the Middle Ages. Many believe the gruesome devices displayed in museums today were actually constructed much later, in the 18th or 19th centuries, by showmen who wanted to sell tickets to wealthy tourists fascinated by the barbaric past. These later creators often took ancient, less lethal medieval restraints and added the dramatic, deadly spikes. But whether the spiked coffin was real or not, the concept of confinement and slow, agonizing puncture was very real. Even if the famous Iron Maiden was a fake, the medieval period certainly had devices that achieved a similar, terrifying effect of pressure and perforation. Consider devices like the Scold's Bridle or the Schadenfreude, devices designed for public humiliation and lesser pain. But when the state wanted true confession or total punishment, they used methods that relied on gravity, pressure, and pointed edges. For example, the rack. This device, unlike the Maiden, was unequivocally real and widely used. The victim was strapped to a wooden frame, their ankles tied to one end and their wrists to the other. Slowly, relentlessly, the torturer would turn a wheel or crank, pulling the limbs in opposite directions. This process stretched the joints past their natural limit, tearing ligaments, popping bones out of their sockets, and eventually, if the turning continued, dislocating and ripping the body apart. The pain was immediate, bone-shattering, and total, but the victim remained conscious throughout. The fear of the rack, the knowledge that your own body's framework could be disassembled while you watched, was often enough to extract any confession the torturers desired. The Iron Maiden, whether real or a myth, represents the same core horror: the body trapped within an unyielding structure, forced into submission by sharp points and unimaginable pressure. It symbolizes the medieval fascination with building literal cages that turned the victim's every muscle twitch into a scream of agony. This era proved that sometimes the most horrific torture isn't a quick slice, but the slow, methodical destruction of your physical foundation. We have seen cruelty delivered by isolation, by mechanics, and by insect consumption. Now, we turn to a method that marries the physiological terror of biological attacks with a truly cruel application of heat and pressure. This is the rat torture, a method employed across various cultures and centuries, often favored for its simplicity and the deep, primal fear it exploits. Rats are already creatures associated with disease, filth, and hidden fear. To weaponize them for torture is to turn a common, scurrying pest into a lethal psychological instrument. The typical setup for rat torture involved a victim restrained, usually naked, on a table or the floor. The crucial part of the apparatus was a simple, sturdy metal bucket or cage, often inverted over the victim's abdomen, chest, or sometimes their head. A few live, hungry rats were then placed inside this container, and the open end of the bucket was pressed firmly against the victim's skin, ensuring no escape route for the rodents. The rats were now trapped directly above the vulnerable, soft tissue of the human body. The next and most crucial step was the application of heat to the outside of the metal bucket. A fire, hot coals, or a blowtorch would be used to rapidly heat the metal container. As the metal heated up, the space inside the bucket quickly became an unbearable furnace. The rats, terrified and desperate to escape the searing heat, would frantically look for any way out. Since the metal was hot and the top was sealed, the only relatively cooler, softer path available was downward, through the flesh of the victim. Driven by pure instinct for survival, the rats would begin to claw, scratch, and eventually burrow into the victim's body. They would chew through the skin, muscle, and tissue to escape the heat, creating deep, ragged, and excruciatingly painful wounds. The victim was not only experiencing the intense heat of the bucket against their skin, but also the shock and horror of feeling living creatures eat their way into their internal organs. The pain was twofold. The initial searing of the skin followed by the deep, internal agony of being slowly perforated. This method was horrific because it was psychological terror made physical. It exploited the natural human aversion to vermin and the fear of being consumed alive. Furthermore, the ensuing injuries, deep, often septic wounds, guaranteed a slow, secondary death from infection if the immediate torture did not kill them. Rat torture, in its chilling use of animal desperation, remains a stark reminder that the human imagination is tragically endless when it comes to inflicting pain. It is a terrifying bargain. Endure the heat, or endure the gnawing descent into your own body. We have explored methods that break the mind, dismantle the body, and exploit animal terror. Now, we turn to a device that is less about duration and more about instant, profound violation and internal destruction. This is the Pair of Anguish, a small, deceptively simple device whose design was focused on causing the most extreme pain through expansion inside a sensitive orifice. Like the Iron Maiden, the history and wide-scale use of the Pair of Anguish are often debated by historians, but the device itself, and the principle behind it, reveals a dark obsession with making punishment uniquely terrifying and humiliating. The device itself was a mechanism made of metal, usually iron or steel, roughly shaped like a large pear or an artichoke. It was composed of 4 metal leaves or segments that were hinged together at the top. At the base of the device was a crank, screw, or small handle. When the handle was turned, the leaves slowly and forcibly separated and unfolded, causing the pear to expand in size. The edges of these leaves were often sharp or had small hooks to increase the damage. The Pair of Anguish was designed to be inserted into a victim's body. Its use was strictly non-fatal but incredibly painful and deeply humiliating. It was primarily used as a punishment for those accused of certain sexual crimes or heresy. The device was inserted into one of the body's natural openings, such as the mouth, the rectum, or the vagina. Once inserted, the torturer would slowly turn the crank. As the crank turned, the metal leaves would begin to separate inside the body. This separation caused extreme tearing and stretching of the internal tissues and muscles. If used in the mouth, often for heretics or blasphemers, the expansion would rip the jaws apart, shattering teeth and severely damaging the soft palate and the throat. The victim would be left permanently disfigured and unable to speak. If used in the rectum or vagina, often for perceived sexual deviance, the slow, relentless expansion would cause massive internal trauma, tearing, and intense, unbearable pain. The pain was often so sudden and shocking that victims would immediately pass out, or if they remained conscious, they would plead to reveal any secret just to stop the grinding, ripping sensation. The terror of the Pair of Anguish lay in its dual function. It was a tool of agonizing physical destruction, but also a profound instrument of humiliation. The areas it targeted were intensely private, and the resulting injury was designed to mark the victim publicly and permanently as a disgraced individual. It was a tool of absolute control, proving that captors could reach and tear apart the most vulnerable parts of a person's existence. The very concept of this device confirms that historical torture often sought not just pain, but the complete destruction of the victim's dignity alongside their physical well-being. We conclude our horrific journey by returning to the modern world, where torture is often refined, clinical, and focused on maximizing information extraction while minimizing physical evidence. Just as we saw with white torture, the modern method is about dismantling the mind's architecture. Our final method, closely related to psychological warfare and isolation, is the systematic destruction of sleep. This is often called sleep deprivation torture or the no-sleep method, and it is a terrifyingly effective tool of coercion. Sleep is not a luxury. It is a fundamental biological necessity. When we sleep, our brains consolidate memories, regulate our emotions, and repair tissues. When sleep is systematically withheld, the body and mind rapidly begin to fail, mimicking the effects of severe physical trauma, yet leaving no visible wounds. The process of sleep deprivation in a torture context is meticulously managed. The victim is kept awake constantly. This can be achieved through various means. Forced standing or awkward positions. The victim is forced to stand for days on end or placed in painful, stress-inducing positions, like bending over or squatting, that make drifting off impossible. As soon as their head droops, they are immediately shocked, beaten, or doused with cold water. Constant noise and light. Loud, jarring music, sometimes repetitive children's tunes, is blasted at high volume, often combined with bright, glaring lights 24 hours a day. This sensory overload prevents the brain from ever settling into a restful state. Physical poking and prodding. Guards are instructed to constantly harass the victim, poking, shaking, or shouting at them every few minutes, ensuring no state of rest can be achieved. After just 48 to 72 hours without sleep, the body starts to break down. The initial fatigue quickly turns into intense emotional distress. The victim becomes irritable, paranoid, and highly sensitive to external stimuli. Their ability to think clearly or rationally dissolves. The emotional control centers of the brain stop working correctly, leading to uncontrollable crying, hysterical laughter, or extreme aggression. As the deprivation continues past 5 days, the victim begins to experience microsleeps, brief, uncontrolled moments of sleep lasting only a few seconds, even while standing. They also begin to suffer from hallucinations. They might see impossible things, hear voices that aren't there, or start to believe the torturers are their friends, or that they are already dead. Their grip on reality becomes fragile, leading to a state where they are incredibly suggestible. This is the goal: to create a mental state so chaotic and desperate that the victim cannot tell the difference between truth and fiction. In this shattered state, they will readily confess to anything, sign any document, or reveal any secret just for the promise of a single hour of rest. The psychological damage is often permanent, leaving the victim with long-term memory loss, anxiety, and an inability to trust their own senses. From the external consumption of scaphism to the internal disintegration caused by sleep deprivation, the history of torture is a grim testament to humanity's capacity for calculated cruelty. It is a history that warns us. The devices may change, but the dark impulse to control, to break, and to utterly dehumanize others remains a chilling constant. These methods are not just relics of the past. They are cautionary tales that scream from the silent pages of history.